Your beliefs become words, words become actions, actions become habits, and habits determine where you go. This is the Motivation Factor Podcast. Hey friends, Michael Bain touching base with you, and you're on again for another episode of the Motivation Factor Podcast. I've got a special treat today as I have the founder of Not Plastic, which is a bio-based plastics company, and host of WeedBudz Radio, which can be heard across all major podcasting platforms. That's right. I'm talking about none other than Rye Russell. What's going on, Rye? How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be a part of your show, man.
Nice. Well, listen, man, I'm glad you're a busy dude, man, crushing it in the business world, being an entrepreneur. So thanks for taking a couple minutes out of your day to talk with us today.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So listen, man, I'm going to kick this off, man. I got a couple of questions that I think are going to bring tremendous amount of value for the listeners today. So first things first, you being an entrepreneur, why be an entrepreneur?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know that any entrepreneur has the answer to why anybody signs up for this life. You know, I've been doing it now since I was officially 21 years old, you know, when I took over a drive-in movie theater. And then, you know, life just progressed. And I thought personally, I wanted to slow down and go a little bit more that kind of corporate traditional route. Okay. And I played in that world. And it's filled with just as much hypocrisy as any other world. And so I really needed to dive deep into who Rye was. And, you know, and now I'm coming back to this world. I'm coming back to being an entrepreneur because I compare entrepreneurship to mad science. Einstein, crazy, bonkers, because at the end of the day, man, we are taking like a metaphorical beaker and we're pouring in solutions and we're listening to problems and we're trying to make something maybe that's never been made or trying to make something that's been made better. And that takes so much testing to the level that nobody wants to talk about it and nobody wants to really do the work. When I hear people talk about, I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, do you know last year, 2019, I started 4 LLCs legally and a bunch of business plans, and only 2 companies went forward into 2020. Wow. Now, I'm a mad scientist, right? Start a company, let's try to build a team, let's see where it goes. Okay, too much resistance. So I'm going to drop this. Doesn't mean I'm done with it. I'm going to table it, and maybe I'll revisit it later. It's like a recipe book. You got to write down the recipe before you can figure out Coca-Cola. Right. And I started playing that game, and I was very, very privileged and very blessed to have this opportunity, Michael. And I definitely want to recognize that not everybody gets this opportunity. And so you need to constantly be aware, and you need to find the opportunity, and you need to make it for yourself. Because for me, 2017, Ryan might have said, I don't know that I can take on bio-based plastics. I don't know that I can take on the petroleum plastic industry. But 2020, Rye says, bring it. Like, I've figured out something, and I've figured out a way to communicate it better than anything we've seen before. And so one of the things that really attracted me to want to talk to your show is I want people to understand that it's okay to not have it, not have it all right from the beginning. Because I never did, man, you know, and so this is a lot of trial and error, testing. And that's why, and you have to be a little maniacal, that crazy brain that doesn't shut off. How do we use it to produce and be productive rather than it to torture us in our sleep or lack thereof?
Yeah. That's good, man. Man, you literally crushed like 3 other questions I had for you, all in that, man. I love it. I love the energy. I'm thinking that the listeners can feel the energy as well, because I can too from my home office recording this.
I love it. I hope so. I love it. And I appreciate the audience giving me some of their day, because time is precious.
Absolutely. So listen, talking word for word here, when I ask you, what does an entrepreneur mean to you, or what qualities or characteristics do you think one needs to have to really succeed in the marketplace today? What kind of comes to mind for you?
My number one is grit. It's my number one, and it's number 2, 3, 4, and 5, because we're from New England, and I think that there's a grittiness to New England in whole, and I think it's reflected in our sports. Okay. We may not have the best athletes. Let's face it. We love our Tom Brady. He is not the most physically fit gentleman on that field. He just isn't. But his mind is the sharpest thing. And you want to talk about maniacal? I mean, this guy eats, sleeps, works it out, and studies the game of football. And he's testing, and he's got a team of people testing. Will this work? Will that work? And so for me, I look at that, and that's New England, is we're resilient. We're not afraid to get a little dirty. And it's something that I see across any level of business. You don't even have to be an entrepreneur. You can be an account executive, a C-level executive. Like the people that are willing to just say, I'm above nothing, and just be humble and know that sometimes playing the underdog leads to way more championships than throwing money at a problem.
For sure. Okay. That's good, man. That's really good grit. I like that. If you could go back in time, let me ask you this, man, because you've accumulated all this experience, all this knowledge, some things working out like you had said, some things not working out like you had previously stated. If you could take it all together, sum it up, you could go back in time in a time machine, talk to yourself, 17-year-old, 18-year-old Rye, and you had a couple of minutes to spare. What would you say to him going through this journey? Everything, if you could go back in time and tell yourself some advice, what would you say?
You got to find a way to be happy, because you'll set benchmarks for yourself. And I did this, right? I remember being 13, knowing that my path in life wouldn't be traditional. Traditional education wasn't working for me. Traditional discipline wasn't working for me. I was a good kid, but I tested, I experimented, and sometimes it got me in trouble. But I would honestly, it's about being happy, because there's goals that I had set for myself to achieve by 25, and I stomped on them. I blew past them. I was so regretful at 25 that was my aspiration. And mind you, those aspirations were big aspirations for some individuals. And it wasn't enough, right? It sacrificed everything in my personal life for that little bit of success. But then I go into a more traditional position, and I'm doing some consulting, and I'm working with startups, and I'm helping build beautiful, productive sales teams. And then I'm still not happy. But now I've got time. I have so much free time in my life. I don't know what to do with it. Yeah. But this 40, 50, 60 hour a week job is ripping up my insides. You know that you're built for more. Right. And you feel like you're settling. And so for me, right, I've had this. Now I've had this. Why am I still a miserable, I don't know what the language is for your audience, man, but why am I that miserable? And I decided to start focusing on Rye. What does Rye want? What's going to make Rye happy? And there's a few things. I look back at everything I did, and I'm never going to be that person that's like, oh, I'm so happy for the journey, and through that failure, I learned X, Y, Z. It's bullshit. I'm letting everybody know, everybody listening at home, it's a load of crap. When those individuals failed, they felt misery, pain, suffering. And then what you do to your own self, like, it's crippling. And so saying, oh, I would live through all of that again because I learned XYZ. Whew. No, what we need to do is we need to be aware. We need to be aware of when we're successful. We need to be aware of why we're successful. And then when we have those things, you absolutely need to write it down and never make that decision again. But it doesn't mean that the idea was bad. It doesn't mean the business was bad. It meant that you didn't have the right people. It meant that you weren't operating within the right channels to sell. And so for me, there's definitely things that I'd look back on my life and say, I wish I didn't do that. Now, that doesn't mean that I have time to live with regret. There's no time for that.
For sure.
But if I could tell teenage me that was honestly doing the very same things I'm doing now, just in a very different scale, right? And maybe the legality of what I'm selling and distributing now is much better than when I was in high school or college. But I've always had that itch, and it wasn't for money. Like, it was, that's the scorecards. And then, man, when I decided that Rye needed some personal development, that scorecard changed. And when I started, and everybody says it, right? In your audience, there's going to be members that are like, everybody says that. But if you collect people instead of pennies, you're going to build much more wealth. And I don't know that your bank account's going to be banking and you're going to be, buying a private jet. That's not reality for most people. And you have to be able to be happy with what that looks like. And so for me now, right, Rye going on that journey of what makes you happy. Okay, so I looked at the drive-in industry. I was in the film industry for a while. What did I like about it? Well, I liked the sense of community. I liked having that, like a giant living room, right, with an entire town of people enjoying popcorn and laughing and crying all at the same thing. To me, that was beautiful. Now, there's aspects of the film industry that I find unattractive. So then I started looking at some of the businesses that I've enjoyed. What parts did I enjoy, and why did I start hating them? And what I came up with was this wellness journey that took me into cannabis radio. And I did that because I never experienced cannabis in high school and college the way that most people do. I was 26 when I first started exploring as a patient. And then it's like, okay, I love community. What better way to start building community rather than in something I enjoy and something I'm also learning, right? Because this industry is so new. So I started the podcast and I jumped everywhere. And I watched industries come online. I watched industries evolve, and I listened. No intention. And I think that's the authenticity piece that I want people to take from this part of our story. Is that I had no intention. I had no idea what my business was. I thought that I might open a dispensary. I thought I might grow. I thought I might do all of these different things that are cool within the cannabis industry. But then I just listened to all of the markets. What do people have in common as a pain point? And we take such a beautiful plant and we put it in petroleum-based plastic. Okay, that's a problem. Time out. So I'm just the hypocrisy. And somebody that, somebody that knows that I am self-proclaimed, I'm a hypocrite because there isn't a soul that lives or breathes that is not in some fashion. And so how do I reduce hypocrisy from my life while reducing hypocrisy from an industry? And that's single-use plastics. It's everywhere. And so I went on another journey while I'm exploring the cannabis industry with some of the most amazing thought leaders in the industry on WeedBudz Radio. I started to hear this come as a common theme. And so I said, how do people not know that this exists? This isn't new. Agricultural-based plastics is not new. And we've had decades of propaganda, right? The petroleum industry's got so much cash. Who's going to fight them? It's not worth fighting them. They'll buy you before you're a threat to them. Not anymore. Not anymore. And so let's look at the opportunity part of the decision making here. I have a podcast. All of a sudden, the entire world stops. And I'm studying these bio-based plastics. But you add a catastrophic event like COVID with grit, and you've got opportunity. And I'm watching it. I'm watching it on LinkedIn. I'm watching some assassins right now work harder. And when COVID hit, this was my time to shine. I'm like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Like, game on. Game on. So we made a pivot. We looked at and we said, hey, okay, we can't take reusable bags into grocery stores. That doesn't mean grocery stores get to go back to plastic bags.
Right.
We found the solution, and not plastic as of today, which is what's so amazing about the timing of this. We physically received the first run off of the machines of not plastic shopping.
Wow.
And here we are, right? We thought we were going to be a cannabis packaging company. And we are. We have those SKUs in development. But what happened was COVID hit, tooling and fine machining companies went offline. So now what I need in part of my supply chain is offline. Do I stop? No. What can we use these machines for? What have we already been playing with? What have we been bags. Oh, how hypocritical that we can't reuse bags, but we just like, oh, well, plastic's still here. Plastic's not our friend. And so we made that pivot. And through this, we are still going to have a cannabis line. But what we realized is we're so much more than the coolest cannabis packaging company. Yeah. We get to be mission driven. We get to change people's minds, educate. We get to build an e-commerce platform, because you know what? I'm not so arrogant to think that the whole world wants to buy my plant-based biodegradable plastic.
Sure.
That's stupid, dumb. So what I did is said, hey, look, what I want to do is I want to start certifying companies as not plastic certified. I want to start certifying products as not plastic certified product, because people need to know that there are product replacements out there for these petroleum-based poisons. And I want to celebrate everybody that's making this shift, because entrepreneurship is freaking hard. Yeah. And so how do I, somebody that's been in the entrepreneurship game a while, new to the cannabis industry, but how do I bring my years of knowledge to an industry with a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, with maybe a lot of kind of black market entrepreneurs that are looking to get and strive in a regulated marketplace? And I said, look, we're ahead of the curve in terms of bio-based plastics, but we need to celebrate everybody else that's going to catch up and surpass us, because that's business. And to think that we're going to be number one forever, that's different. So to recognize we're going to be number 2, we'll be number 3, maybe we'll be number 10, but we can help amplify a community of entrepreneurs that are going to save a community, which is our planet. Like, that's the part that just gets me so excited, is all of my experiences were so regional or they were national. This is the first thing that, for me, I get to open up my arms to a community across the world that understands this mission. And I want to make one more point about just what this takes. Another component of not plastic is, again, we're fighting hypocrisy, which means we cannot be arrogant. We cannot assume that we're going to tell the customer that they need to consume better, and they will. Why is it their responsibility when it's industry that has made this readily available, that has pushed it and shoved it into people's lives? And now we're going to blame the consumers for the plastic problem. That's where I really kind of put on the gloves and I'm ready for war, because industry will not blame the consumer for a problem that industry starts. And so that is what part of our ethos at Not Plastic is: how do we make less stuff with more uses that removes itself from the earth and holds industry accountable? I am not going to tell consumers, you have to consume my product in XYZ form and you need to put it in a blue bin. No. If you're a jerk and you're going to throw your plastic packaging out on the road, then you're a jerk and you're going to throw your plastic packaging out on the road. However, it's industry's job to make sure that package doesn't stay there for 1,000 years, not the jerk that threw it out the window. And so all of these concepts to me and to you are so fundamental, but to an industry that hasn't been checked ever, the time's coming. I trust me, we need oil and gas right now. We need to phase out of it. There are great entrepreneurs studying a lot of aspects. And I'm only focused on plastics, right? There's all of these other sustainability things that can be done and will be done. But I've got the gloves on, baby. We're going to start boxing the petroleum-based plastics industry because it's not the consumer's fault.
Right on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it firsthand from Rye Russell, again, founder of Not Plastic, bio-based plastic company, and host of WeedBudz Radio, which can be heard across all major podcasting platforms. He brought the fire today for you. Rye, listen, that's all the time we have, but I want to thank you so much for taking some time to come on the show with us today. Your beliefs become words. Words become actions. Actions become habits, and habits determine where you go. This is the Motivation Factor